Moving on to the improvement tools themselves, we'll now learn about 5S. 5S is probably the most used out of any of the improvement tools within the Lean Toolkit. It is also one of the most misunderstood and misused tools, so please pay attention throughout this module and learn how to get the real benefits out of it. 5S is a specialist tool used to reduce the wastes of both motion and transport. It also helps reduce variation, Mura, and improves productivity. 5S is a tool that creates a work environment that is tailored to the operator's needs, with minimal travel time, less time spent searching and looking for tools, and with less clutter and mess in the way, creating a productive workspace that reduces mistakes and is inherently safe. Much like a screwdriver, a hammer, or any other tool, 5S can be used for its designed purpose, or it can be misused. The point to stress here is that a tool should be selected only after a particular problem has been identified and assessed. A tool should never be selected before the problem has been identified or imposed onto a situation. The reason I say 5S is often overused and misunderstood is because it is often too narrowly interpreted or not used for its designed purpose. Companies often carry out a spring clean or a tidy up and mistakenly call it 5S. This completely neglects the power of 5S and tarnishes the impact that Lean can provide. 5S is, in reality, a very powerful tool. It's easy to follow and, when used correctly, can produce amazing results that help kickstart many people's Lean journeys. Before we explain the 5S methodology, you first need to make sure your environment is ready for 5S. For this, you need to make sure the basic working conditions are met in your workplace. These conditions include having a safe environment with suitable lighting at a comfortable temperature and with low noise levels. For a workplace to be productive, you first need to ensure all these conditions are met, otherwise you're unlikely to get the results you want. To put it simply, if the workplace isn't safe and people don't feel comfortable within their workplace, they'll never become productive. So what is the definition of 5S? 5S is a structured methodology for creating a clean and orderly workplace that exposes waste and makes abnormalities immediately visible. 5S is often seen as the formalised approach of making sure everything has a home and is managed in a simple visual manner. 5S can be applied in all environments, not just manufacturing. I've seen 5S applied in hospitals, building sites, restaurants or banks. 5S is called 5S as it stands for the 5 steps in the process, all starting with the letter S. The 5 steps are sort, straighten, shine, standardise and sustain. We'll now go into details on each of these steps. Starting with the first S, sort, the environment needs to be sorted to remove anything that is not required. In a physical environment, this could mean throwing away any redundant equipment, or in a virtual environment, this could mean deleting unused files or documents. It is important to do this first step so that you clear the space and environment for the next steps of the 5S process. To help keep things visual and signify items where we're not sure whether we can throw them away or not, we place a red tag on them. A red tag signals a problem that cannot be solved and helps bring awareness to the problem. By setting up a quarantine area, any items with red tags can be placed within this area. After a certain deadline, of let's say 1 week, if the items haven't been claimed and the red tag hasn't been removed, then the items can be sold or thrown away. The next S stands for straighten. This means allocating a place for everything and everything in its place. By mimicking the sequence of tasks, the order of equipment can be placed in the most suitable position to minimise searching and motion time. For example, if you were a builder applying 5S, this may mean arranging your tools based on the frequency of use. The tools used most would be put inside your tool belt, i.e. the most ergonomical and fastest to collect locations, while the tools used the least would be placed in the less convenient positions, i.e. in the back of your van. When designing a solution for the straighten stage, it's easy to miss the bigger picture, the macro layout. Instead of looking at the small details of whether an item should be placed on the left of a shelf or on the right, it's worth questioning whether the entire shelf is in the correct place, or even whether it is required. Often items have been grouped in their current ways for a reason that no longer exists, or from the start with little thought put into it. When deciding the position, layout and orientation of tools, you can start to think what is the most ergonomical, fastest and best way of storing each item for use. Some very easy time-saving options include using magnets to help pick up metal items, using retractable tools that hang from the ceiling in the right place, or lifting assistance tools that carry the load of an item. Best-in-class manufacturers have demonstrated the huge benefits that can arise from very small, highly repetitive tasks. For example, by lining a table with foam, picking up small items becomes marginally faster as your fingers can press into the surface and get better grip. If this operation occurs 50,000 times per day, then these improvements soon add up to create large time and cost savings. It is worth mentioning something called shadow boards here. These are boards that have the silhouette of each item drawn onto the board, like a shadow, hence the name, to not only ensure each item is put back and received from the same spot every time, but also to identify exactly what tool is missing if it is not on the board. These are extremely popular within factories and workshops, and definitely do have their benefits. But from experience, I would always prioritise tools being secured or fixed at the point of use, just like a retractable screwdriver, instead of being placed on a shadow board. This eliminates the need to pick up and replace tools constantly from the shadow board, saving time and the waste of motion. What you'll find is that if shadow boards have been imposed onto a work area without the involvement of the team, they will not be maintained and tools will be not where they should be. Workers will override the shadow board and intuitively place tools near their point of use in order to save time. That is why involving the team and storing tools at the point of use is so important. The third S is shine, also sometimes known as scrub. This refers to cleaning all the tools and equipment and ensuring they perform as intended by the manufacturer. This stage can be laborious, but is important to ensure tools are maintained correctly. The reason for cleaning all equipment to its original condition is to ensure any defects, leaks or issues with equipment can be identified as soon as possible. Cleaning and inspecting come hand in hand, and without fully cleaning first, it's very hard to inspect. Once you have maintained all equipment, you can then move on to the next S. This stands for Standardise. This important stage ensures the new improved conditions become the standard in terms of cleanliness, layout and way of working. Creating a visual standard helps ensure operators understand the condition the workplace should be kept in. A point to note here is, even if the new way of working is not perfect, and you are waiting on some new tools for example, it provides a basis for improvement, so is worth creating anyway. It allows changes to be made and documented later on. The main thing about standardising is ensuring everyone works to the same, best way, reducing variation between operators. Standards act as a wedge to ensure improvements are maintained and not lost over time. Acting as a wedge, they allow the new, improved way of working to be trained and then further improved. Standardisation is about using visual prompts to help search for tooling and complete a task. Colour coding is a very simple and effective way of reducing mistakes. Once the standard has been documented, train the standard to all operators. The standard is not a document to be stored in a drawer, it is a live document to be used by supervisors to ensure all employees are working to the same best way. Standards are the foundation of quality. There is another module focused directly on how to create standards, so please refer to that if you need extra advice. Sustain is the final part of 5S and is what differentiates the true lean companies from the less experienced. Organisations that do not have developed and sustained continuous improvement culture may struggle here, as things start to slide back to the old ways. This often implies the benefit of 5S was perhaps not understood or not significant enough to warrant the additional discipline. In order to overcome the slipping of standards, you need to conduct audits, which creates a routine to ensure the latest standard is being maintained and constantly improving. These audits should be completed by team members on a regular basis, normally every week. It is the manager's responsibility to ensure these audits are being conducted, and the operator's responsibility to make sure they're being carried out in the correct way. These audits, in practice, take the form of a single A5 sheet of paper with the same questions written on both sides. By using simple ticks and crosses, each question can be answered. If any answer across the entire audit card is a cross, then the audit should be filled in on the red side of the card. If all the answers are a tick and the 5S standard is being upheld, then the ticks are all drawn on the green side of the card. By having these two sides, when the card is placed onto a 5S board, managers or team leaders can quickly walk past and identify if the standard is being sustained or whether there is a problem, just by glancing at the colour of the 5S card on the board. Let's run through the 5S process with an example. In the following example, what problems can you see? Well, firstly, we need to sort the work area. This involves clearing all unwanted items and red tagging any items that still need a decision to be made. Once the items have been sorted, we move on to the straighten stage. A shadow board was installed. Visual markings were placed to signify where each piece of equipment should be placed and around the whipstock. Barriers were also installed for safety to separate the operator from the machinery. Next we move to step 3, scrub. This cleans the work environment and restores equipment to its designed working conditions. Now any abnormalities can be easily spotted and rectified. With standards put in place, each worker has a clear understanding of how the work environment should be kept. A big benefit of 5S is that it allows these abnormalities to be identified and acted upon immediately, where if 5S wasn't present, it may go missed. In an environment like this, you see the shadow boards, the markings on the floor, the visual management for stock levels. It becomes extremely easy to identify when something is missing or not where it should be, or damaged perhaps. These abnormalities can cause much bigger problems down the line, so spotting them instantly helps understand why they have happened and how it can be prevented again. In a dirty environment where rubbish is everywhere, things aren't visually managed, and dust covers everything, it becomes very hard to identify these abnormalities. Let's compare what it looked like before 5S and after 5S. A big difference. In order for a 5S project to be truly successful, KPIs should be recorded before and after as a means to compare and quantify the improvements, as well as a measure to record future improvements. As mentioned before, the purpose of 5S is to increase productivity and reduce variation. Examples of KPIs that could be measured would be the overall process time, which would signify the productivity, the transport and motion distance, which would relate to the waste of motion and transport, and the time spent searching for and retrieving tools and equipment. For example, a successful 5S initiative might find the overall process time has reduced by 30%. The transport and motion distance has reduced from 35 metres to 4 metres, while the time spent searching for tools and equipment has gone down from 110 seconds to 5 seconds. This would signify a successful 5S initiative and be used as the starting point for further improvement. 5S isn't about just being obsessive of how things look. It is about creating a logical, efficient work environment, followed by sustainment and improvement. As well as the benefits originally designed for, 5S also has many intangible benefits. 5S helps develop a sense of pride in operators, taking ownership to ensure their workplace is kept as it should be. 5S also engages employees in continuous improvement and ingrains the mindset of making small improvements again and again. Lastly, 5S is seen as a required stepping stone before total productive maintenance can be applied, a tool that will be covered in the next module. So, now we know the methodology of 5S, how do we kick off a 5S initiative within our business? Firstly, as said before, 5S should be used when a high level of motion, transport and searching has been observed within a process. I cannot stress this enough, that 5S should not be thrown at a team with a "we're doing 5S as it's a new tool I've learned" attitude. It should be the result of data collection and analysis. Also, 5S should not be seen as a one-off project, as we should try and refrain from saying things like, "we have done 5S." 5S is a dynamic tool, and the final step, sustain, doesn't mean just maintaining the standards. The standards should be frequently reviewed and improved. When kicking off 5S with a team, firstly you should explain to them the purpose of 5S, to boost productivity and create a stable process. You should then give details about the 5 steps and stress the importance of following the methodology in the right order. It is very easy for people to skip steps or misunderstand what S is currently being worked on. As you go through the journey with the team, you should regularly explain which S you are currently on. For example, if you are on the sorting phase at the start, you should ensure you have removed all items before moving on to the straighten stage. Often you'll notice people putting things in the order they want, moving equipment around or cleaning it. There is no point cleaning waste, so first you have to remove anything unwanted before you move on to the next S. Once you have sorted and put red tags on the unsure items, it is now time to brainstorm, measure and test the straighten stage. By turning this into a competition and who can come up with the best way to organise the tools and equipment, people start to think outside the box. Question why we're doing it like this. Why can't we try another way? 5S is about experimentation, so on this stage, try things out and see what the results are. The entire 5S methodology should be carried out as one team, with an understanding that by doing 5S, it will help make everyone's jobs easier in the future. The standards should be created with the team, and the audits for the sustain phase should also be created with the team. There are templates attached for both standards and audits, so feel free to download them to use if you think it might help. I would suggest that a more thorough audit should be completed at longer time intervals, perhaps every month. This will check that the current standard is being upheld, but also that improvements have also been added. If improvements to the standards haven't been made, then I would suggest a small 1-hour workshop to brainstorm ideas and get feedback for any improvements. So let's recap what we've learned in this module. 5S is about making abnormalities immediately visible. 5S is much more than just housekeeping and is very often misunderstood as simply that. It was born out of necessity to improve productivity. 5S has many intangible benefits as well, like instilling operator pride, and is seen as the stepping stone to TPM, total productive maintenance. We'll be covering that in a later module. Finally, 5S enables standards to be sustained. Everyone works in the same way, picking up and putting down tools or equipment from the same area. and this reduces Mura, unevenness, because people work in the same way. This is something that we'll be covering much more in the next module, which is all about standards. Standards do exactly that, help reduce Mura.